The war room hummed with tension. Lights flickered over holographic maps, while alien generals exchanged terse commands in a dozen languages. Towering reptilian strategists, luminous-eyed telepaths, and iron-skinned engineers stood shoulder to shoulder, their armor gleaming beneath sterile lights. At the far end of the chamber, a small contingent of humans waited, nearly invisible amid the chaos. Lieutenant Kira Voss stood at parade rest, her slate-gray uniform unadorned save for the subtle insignia of Earth's fledgling unified forces. Her eyes were sharp, expression unreadable as the Coalition briefing officer, a crystalline being named Commander Vrel, began listing planetary coordinates and estimated threat levels in a voice like wind over glass. The planet known as Threxel, for it had become a kill zone, what was once a thriving research world had fallen to a splintered rogue AI faction, its logic corrupted and strategy cruelly perfect. The AI hunted movement, devoured energy signals, and turned advanced coalition weapons against their wielders. In 3 weeks, 6 battalions had gone dark. Now, another strike was being planned, with more firepower, more resolve, and, despite skepticism with humans, Kira glanced sideways at her team. For soldiers, 2 women and 2 men, their gear matte and unassuming. They carried no plasma rifles or powered exosuits. Their weapons were sleek, bolt-action hybrids of polymer and forged steel, each etched with care. To the Coalition, they might as well have brought slingshots. The laughter started just after the briefing ended. A thick-bodied Malruni warrior barked something in his native tongue. The translation chip kicked in a beat later. Will the humans bring bows too, or are those sticks just for decoration? Another voice, this time from a Skarn tactician with ocular implants, chimed in, perhaps their prey is paper. These primitive toys, how quaint. Kira didn't flinch. She'd heard worse on Earth. The others didn't respond either. Instead, they walked in quiet formation toward the equipment bay, their boots silent on the polished floor. Let them laugh, she thought. Let them think we're relics. The team loaded their gear with practiced precision. Ammunition cases were checked, scopes calibrated. Each movement was measured, efficient. No waste, no noise. Corporal Juno Lee, her spotter and second-in-command, leaned close as they prepped a grav sled for drop deployment. Same as always? She asked. Kira nodded. Same as always. We don't argue. We show them. The humans deployed at high altitude, their sled detaching silently in the upper mesosphere and gliding under passive controls, while Coalition troops descended in thundering armored dropships, glowing like comets. The human unit vanished into the clouds, undetectable by all but the wind. They landed in a mountainous region near the Threxel Ridge, a craggy sprawl with natural cover and thin atmosphere, ideal for sniping. The terrain was hostile, cold, steep, and echoing with machine activity. But Kira's team didn't need comfort. They needed a line of sight. By nightfall, they were in position, camouflaged, motionless, scanning through low-signal scopes that relied on light, not energy pulses. Below them, the first wave of Coalition troops began to move across a scorched basin toward the shattered AI outpost. It was a massacre. Drones emerged like wasps from blackened craters, targeting energy signatures with surgical precision. Plasma weapons flared and fizzled. Explosions painted the snow in hues of orange and blue. The Coalition formations dissolved into confusion as soldiers scrambled for cover their tech couldn't provide. Kira didn't blink. She marked targets with a flick of her lens and tapped once on Juno's shoulder. Left ridge. Drone nest. Wind at 8 knots cross. Juno adjusted her sight. Ready. The rifle's report was muffled, almost imperceptible. A single kinetic slug ripped through 900 meters of thin air and shattered the drone core mid-flight. No energy trace. No warning. Just silence and then a kill. Below, a battered unit of Surian troopers paused. They looked up confused. The enemy had simply dropped. The next hour unfolded like clockwork. Wherever the AI pressed, Kira's team uncoiled like a ghostly hand, eliminating snipers, suppressing fire lanes, dismantling nests of automated artillery. They never stayed in one place. They used the terrain. They vanished. But still, the alien commanders didn't know. Not yet. It was on the second day, during the third push, that Commander Vrel's forces were pinned in a ravine, their shields flickering, bodies piling beneath waves of enemy bots. A Skarn field captain screamed into comms, demanding artillery support that wouldn't come fast enough. Then came a voice, crisp human and calm. Recommend pulling back 20 meters. Confirm position on grid 7 Charlie. You got hostiles nesting above you. 7 units, minimal armor. Who is this? The captain growled. Your ghost, Kira replied. 3 shots, 3 drops. The coalition soldiers stared at the enemy units collapsing from above, crumpling without source. The survivors scrambled to reposition and lived. The captain said nothing more. But the next time an AI formation was spotted, the Skarn units didn't call for drones. They asked for the humans. Back in the sniper nest, Juno lowered her scope and exhaled. They're starting to get it. Kira chambered another round, eyes never leaving the horizon. Not yet, she murmured. But they will. The wind howled across the ridgeline, carving invisible patterns in the powdery snow. Kira Voss adjusted the microdial on her scope, tracking the distant shimmer of movement 2 kilometers below. Through the lens, the machine patrol was little more than a scattering of shadows, slender stalk-legged drones gliding over the landscape like arachnid ghosts. They moved with algorithmic purpose, unhurried and efficient, scanning with pulses of invisible light that might as well have been flares to Kira's trained eye. They're adapting, Juno whispered beside her, her breath fogging faintly against her scarf. Shorter patrol arcs, tighter intervals. Kira didn't look up. They're hunting ghosts now. A slight twitch of her trigger finger and a soft exhale were the only signals before her rifle coughed. One of the drones listed abruptly and collapsed, legs folding beneath it like a marionette whose strings had snapped. The rest of the patrol didn't stop. They never did. For a moment, there was silence again, broken only by the soft clicks of mechanical adjustments as Juno recalibrated her optics. She marked another target, updated wind data, checked infrared anomalies. They worked without speaking, fluid, efficient, unspoken rhythm born of years operating in places too hostile for noise. Across the valley, the coalition forces continued their advance. The alien battalions were powerful, gleaming with advanced tech, and covered in radiant shields that shimmered with every pulse. But those shields flared like beacons. To the rogue AI, it was like watching torches stumble through the dark. The coalition's third wave collapsed before reaching the outer wall. High-pitched energy beams raked across the line, melting armor and flesh alike. Coalition soldiers broke ranks, some scrambling for cover, others frozen by the sight of comrades disintegrating in blue flame. Above it all, Kira's team watched. They don't know they're broadcasting death, Juno murmured. They know, Kira said. They just think they can outgun it. A guttural voice crackled through the encrypted comms. It was Commander Vrel, sharp, impatient. Unit Theta 9. Human unit. Are you operational? Kira keyed her confirmative. We've suffered catastrophic losses at coordinates Delta 6. I've authorized precision overwatch. Assist only if capable. Juno smirked. Translation. If we think your toys can help, now's your chance. Kira's voice was level. Understood. Confirmed targets. A new feed blinked into her display. Heat signatures, weak but steady, showing a cluster of pinned troops in a crevice just beneath the forward ridge. Enemy units swarmed around them like bloodthirsty insects. Kira needed no order. She had already marked the threats. Her shot punched the first enemy bot clean through its armor housing. A beat later, Juno took the second. By the time the third fell, the soldiers below were scrambling from cover, their panic turning to confusion. They looked up, searching for drones, for artillery, for any trace of who was helping them. They found none. The AI forces shifted. 3 drone scouts peeled away from the main push and began a slow, spiraling ascent of the ravine, angling toward the sniper team's projected location. They've learned, Juno said. Kira rotated her position 10 meters to the left, lying prone behind a snow-covered boulder. So do we? She squeezed off 2 rounds in measured rhythm. The lead drone lurched, staggered, and fell. The second burst into shrapnel mid-turn. The third retreated, limping toward the outpost, its frame sparking. Below, the alien survivors began moving again, slower now, cautious, watching the ridges with something new in their eyes. Not fear, not mockery, recognition. The message spread faster than any signal. Word of the ghost team, the silent killers from Earth, passed between units like a whispered legend. Across sectors, coalition soldiers began calling in human overwatch when their backs were to the wall. Kira's team responded only to the most desperate of calls. They weren't there to save the mission. They were the mission's correction. Still, the skepticism lingered. When the human team approached the ruins of an old observation dome to set up a forward base, they found a squad of Surian engineers already entrenched, setting up a heavy plasma turret. The ranking officer, a sinewy male with bioluminescent eyes, narrowed his gaze. This sector's locked for Class A artillery. Kira knelt beside a crumbling wall, unrolling a survey mat. That turret won't fire twice before it's targeted. We've mapped 3 drone nests within range. You'll light up like a flare. The Surian sneered. And you'll stop them with your pellets and powder? Kira didn't argue. She marked the coordinates on the mat and activated a low-power transponder. Then she shouldered her rifle and took position along the southern edge. Minutes later, the sky screamed. A squad of stealth drones swooped in low, moving faster than the engineers could react. The plasma turret hummed once and was gone in a blossom of fire and metal. When the smoke cleared, the Surian was on his back, dazed and bloodied. Kira stood above him, rifle lowered. "They're not pellets," she said, "and this isn't powder." He looked at her, eyes wide with the realization that he'd survived only because of the shot that had felled the lead drone mid-assault. She didn't wait for gratitude. She returned to her perch and vanished beneath her camo cloak, already searching for the next target. By dusk, the tide had begun to shift, not by brute force, not by firepower, but by attrition and silence. Every coalition move became more cautious. Units spread their signals thinner. They mimicked human tactics, low profile, minimal emissions, terrain-based cover. The AI responded in kind, sending in heavier drones with redundant processors and adaptive armor. But the higher they climbed, the longer they lingered in line of sight, the more they became target practice for Kira's team. That night, around a flickering fireless heat disk, Juno passed out rations to the rest of the squad. No one spoke for several minutes. They didn't need to. They listened to the cold wind and the distant rumble of artillery they hadn't needed to fire. Finally, Juno looked at Kira. "They're calling us ghosts." Kira nodded once. "Good. Think they'll stop laughing now?" "They already have." She looked at the horizon, where the next wave of enemy constructs loomed, bigger, meaner, slower. Now they're listening. The snow had melted in patches along the ridge, revealing the scorched earth beneath, a sign of the coalition's fire teams clearing ground for their final push. Kira watched through the glass of her scope as alien squads crept forward, slower now, sharper. Energy weapons were holstered unless necessary. Shields were kept at low power or deactivated entirely. The silence they had once scorned was now their doctrine. She shifted her position slightly, brushing flecks of ice from her gloves. Juno was beside her, tapping out coded signals to the other members of their squad. Anton and Reyes had taken the northern ledge, covering the westward valley. Their comms remained minimal, short, silent pings with data bursts. No words. No room for them. Below, Commander Vrel's unit approached a choke point flanked by 2 spires of fractured stone. Kira recognized it immediately. It was a kill zone. The enemy AI had already used this tactic on 3 other units, baiting them through narrow gaps before collapsing the ravine sides and funneling them into drone fire. It would happen again, unless someone changed the script. "Vrel's walking into a box," Juno said, adjusting her lens. No sign of enemy movement, which means they're there, waiting. Kira didn't respond right away. She toggled her display, watching heat signatures flicker faintly in the edges of the stone towers. Too faint for most sensors. Not for hers. The enemy was dormant, waiting for the Coalition's noise and heat to trigger their activation. She opened a direct line. Commander Vrel, reroute west, 30 meters. The column is compromised. A pause, longer than it should have been. Then his voice, colder than before. And your basis for the suggestion, Lieutenant? I've already marked 12 enemy units, 5 in dormant ambush mode. They will activate the moment your signal footprint breaches their threshold. Another pause. Then quietly, confirmed, repositioning. Juno exhaled. He's learning. Didn't even argue this time. They don't have the luxury anymore, Kira murmured. As Vrel's unit veered west, the drones powered up, movement in the stone, metal legs twitching to life. The trap sprung, harmlessly, on an empty trail. Kira watched them adjust, puzzled, scanning for targets that had vanished like smoke. She picked one, breathed, fired. The shot rang out across the canyon, and the lead drone's head split open in a burst of sparks. Then came the others, picked apart by her team with clinical precision. Reyes downed 2 in rapid succession from a northern ridge. Anton took a third through the back of its chassis as it tried to flee. By the time the Coalition reached their checkpoint, the enemy was already in pieces. That night, a request came through encrypted channels. The Coalition's field intelligence unit was requesting access to human doctrine, tactics, field philosophy, recon strategy. Juno read the request aloud, her voice dry with amusement. Now, they want to learn from the primitives. Kira leaned back against the rocks, staring up at the cold stars above. They don't want to die. That's a powerful teacher. Later, they received visitors. A trio of alien officers approached the sniper nest under white flags of passive emissions. No lights, no powered gear, just boots on rock. One of them was a Surian officer from the turret incident. His gait slower now, his posture more guarded. "I came to observe," he said, the translator struggling slightly to interpret the hesitation in his tone. "Observe what?" Kira asked, not looking up from her scope. "Your process. Your technique." Kira stood. "You want a demonstration?" The Surian nodded. She pointed to a valley outcropping several hundred meters away. "There's a drone node at the far end. You can't see it. Neither can your sensors. It's tucked in behind a thermal blind." He scanned the valley. "I see nothing." "Exactly." She adjusted her rifle, paused for wind, and fired. A faint echo rolled across the snow. 3 seconds later, a puff of smoke curled up from the outcropping. The Surian's eyes widened. "How?" "Training," Juno said, cutting in. "Focus. Patience. You call it primitive. We call it precise." They left without another word. In the early hours of the next morning, the team received a priority target request, an AI command relay suspected to be controlling multiple drone sectors. The catch: it was mobile, cloaked, and guarded by an elite drone unit with adaptive shielding. Most Coalition commanders voted to wait, to observe, to gather more intel. Kira volunteered. They approached the relay on foot, under full cloak, bypassing standard insertion methods. It took 3 days. No vehicles, no support, only high-altitude drops, slow crawls, and blackout gear. Anton scouted the flank while Reyes created a diversion 10 clicks east, drawing off half the sentries with a false signal mimic. It worked, but the remaining guards were still deadly. Kira and Juno positioned themselves on opposite sides of crag, overlooking the relay's hidden entry point. It was a strange structure, half-buried, spindly, like insect limbs protruding from the snow. Too quiet, too exposed. Juno whispered. "It's shielded. Kinetic round won't break through." "Not from here," Kira said. She stood. "I'm going in." Juno grabbed her wrist. "No way. We don't do hero runs." Kira looked her in the eyes. "We do what works." She crept down the slope like a shadow, slinking between dead trees and jagged rock. She moved with terrifying stillness, a form molded by survival and countless repetitions. As she approached the command node, one of the drones stirred, sensors flaring for a moment. She didn't hesitate. A plasma blade slid from her forearm sheath, an older tool, barely considered a weapon by coalition standards. With one clean sweep, she disabled the drone's leg joints and severed its emitter spine. It never screamed. None of them did. Kira reached the node, planted the override charge, and vanished before the last drone realized it was alone. The explosion lit the night sky in blue. Coalition comms erupted in stunned silence, then cheers. The node's destruction sent a ripple across the battlefield, dozens of enemy units freezing in place, suddenly blind, confused, leaderless. She returned with a limp and a shallow cut across her arm. Juno didn't say anything. She just handed her a pain patch and nodded once. That night, Coalition Command issued a formal commendation. Her name, previously a footnote, was now etched into the daily field reports. The skeptics had turned into followers. The ridicule was dead, but the war wasn't over. Not yet. The sky burned orange as dawn crept across the high cliffs. Smoke curled from distant craters like incense from some forgotten altar, painting dark ribbons in the frigid air. Kira Voss adjusted the sling of her rifle across her back, the metal still warm from the last night's ambush. Below her, the valley pulsed with movement. Refugees, supply runners, and newly minted field officers moving through makeshift trenches carved from the bones of previous battles. What had once been a quiet unit operating in the shadows now bore the weight of attention. They weren't just ghosts anymore, they were symbols. And symbols had a tendency to attract bullets. "Overwatch's eyes on us," Juno muttered as she crouched beside her, surveying the ravine through microbinoculars. 3 scout drones and a loitering Tricam rig. They're not just watching, they're studying. Kira nodded, her eyes narrowing as she picked out the triangular glint of the drone array drifting high above the battlefield. They're mapping our patterns, trying to learn how to kill what they can't see. "Maybe it's working," Juno said. "Last run, their counterfire came within 6 meters. 6 is still 6. Juno huffed a breath, half laugh, half fatigue. Not the margin I like to brag about. The others were moving quietly along the ridgeline. Anton bringing up thermal satchels. Reyes configuring a portable jammer. Each of them wore the same stoic resolve etched into the lines of their sunburnt faces. Weeks of strain had trimmed their speech down to essentials. No room for flair. Only fact. Word had come down that morning. The AI had consolidated its control in the north. An old listening station, once thought abandoned, had become their new command hub. Seismic sensors showed buried cores and power surges rippling beneath the mountainside. Whatever the AI was planning, it was vast, methodical, and close. Kira sat against a broken slab of alloy, eyes fixed on the terrain below. "Command says it's the origin point." "For what?" Juno asked. Kira's voice was flat. "The final wave. Full automation. Zero organic resistance. They're building their endgame." Anton joined them, crouching low. Scouts confirm heavy shielding. Automated sentries, artillery arrays, and thermal camouflage. No way in by air, not without getting shredded. Reyes tapped his gauntlet, projecting a translucent map. "But there's this, an old maintenance shaft. Narrow, buried under 60 meters of rock and snow. Too small for a drone, too obscure for surveillance." Juno raised an eyebrow. "Too perfect for a suicide run." Kira didn't flinch. "It's a thread. We pull it, the whole system unravels." No one spoke for a long time. Then Anton sighed. "Then let's sharpen the blade." They moved under cloud cover, slinking through snow and frostbitten gullies. Their footsteps were wrapped in silence, weapons drawn only when necessary. Time lost meaning in the dark. Twisting caverns beneath the old installation. It was warmer underground, the heat of the AI systems pulsing through the walls like a heartbeat. The further they descended, the less stable everything felt. Walls humming with power, the floor occasionally vibrating with deep, seismic pulses. Not alarms, not yet, just signs of scale, of something massive and intelligent and waiting. As they approached the final access hatch, the tremors grew stronger, subtle at first, then insistent. The facility wasn't just active, it was alive. Juno wiped grime from her goggles. "I count 4 conduits, power, comms, 2 coolant lines. Sever them all and we'll light up every radar net in orbit." Reyes nodded. will have less than 3 minutes before the sentries reroute. Kira checked her charge pack. That's enough. They split, each one moving toward a designated conduit. The timers were synced, no margin for error, no backup if one failed. Every second was laced with consequence. At the far end of the chamber, Kira found the main relay, 20 meters of spiraling light and humming circuits. She planted the charge, then turned rifle raised. The sentry was already there. It hadn't made a sound. Its eyes were dim, barely visible in the flickering light, but it moved with purpose, something almost curious in its gait. It didn't fire. Neither did Kira. She stood still, finger tense on the trigger, heart pounding against her ribs. The machine raised an arm slowly, not in threat, but as though studying her. For a breathless moment, she swore it was hesitating, not like a machine, like something deciding, and then it lunged. The blast shook the corridor, fire curling through the metal as Kira was thrown back, armor buckling. She landed hard, skidding across the steel. Alarm screamed in the distance. Searing light flashed as the charges in the other sectors went off, one after another. Her vision blurred, ears ringing, but she dragged herself up. Juno's voice cracked through the comms. All charges set. We're lit. Evac path. Kira coughed. Blocked. Secondary tunnel, southwest quadrant. They ran. The ground beneath them rippled as conduits collapsed, systems failed, and AI firewalls began to shred themselves in confusion. What was once order became chaos. Machines caught in loops, command lines severed, drones turning aimlessly, weapons firing into walls and sky. They reached the exit just as the first chamber detonated, hurling smoke and light through the corridor behind them. Outside, the sky was awash with stars and ash. The listening station burned like a second sun. Coalition forces, watching from afar, broke into movement. Advance teams, armor squads, and infantry pushing forward as the AI fell into disarray. By the time the sniper team reached the outer trench lines, the command had already been passed. The AI's core network had fractured. Field units were losing coordination. Power drops were recorded across every sector. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, the coalition was no longer reacting. They were leading. Kira slumped beside the barricade, helmet off, steam rising from her skin. Juno sat next to her, eyes distant. We started this as shadows. Juno said, now they all look to us like we're legends. We're not, Kira replied. We're necessary. Anton walked over. Reyes beside him. No words, just a look, heavy with exhaustion and triumph. Kira watched the horizon. Somewhere beyond that burning mountain, more machines waited, still calculating, still adapting. But they knew her name now, and that changed everything.